Hello, everyone. I'm Bryn from New Oxford, and welcome to another evening reading of Dracula by Bram Stoker. And tonight I will be reading from chapter 25. Dr. Seward's Diary, 11 October evening. Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants to an exact record kept. I think that none of us were surprised when we were asked to see Mrs. Harker a little before the time of sunset. We have of late come to understand that sunrise and sunset are the two her times of peculiar freedom, when her old self can be manifest without any controlling force, subduing or restraining her, or inciting her to action. This mood or condition begins some half hour or more before actual sunrise or sunset and lasts till either the sun is high or while the clouds are still aglow with the rays streaming above the horizon. At first, there is a sort of negative condition, as if some tie were loosened, and then the absolute freedom quickly follows. Then, however, the freedom ceases, the change back or relapse comes quickly, preceded only by a spell of warning silence. Tonight, when we meet, she was somewhat constrained and bore all the signs of internal struggle. I put it down myself to her making a violent effort at the earliest instant she could do so. A few minutes, a very few minutes, however, gave her complete control of herself. Then, motioning her husband to sit beside her on the sofa, where she was half reclining, she made the rest of us bring chairs up close. Taking her husband's hand in hers, she began. We are all here together in freedom, or perhaps the last time. I know, dear, I know that you will always be with me to the end. This was to her husband, whose hand had, as we could see, tightened upon hers. In the morning, we go out upon our task, and God alone knows what what may be in store for any of us. You are going to be so good to me as to take care of me, take you with me. I know that all the brave, earnest men can do for a poor, weak woman whose soul perhaps is lost. No, no, not yet. But it is at any rate at stake. You will do. But you must remember that I am not as you are. There is a poison in my blood, in my soul, which may destroy me, which must destroy me, unless some relief comes to us. Oh, my friends, you know as well as I do that my soul is at stake. And though I know there is one way out for me, you must not, and I must not take it. She looked appealingly to us all in turn, beginning and ending with her husband. What is that way? Asked Van Helsing in a hoarse voice. What is that way which we may not take? That I may die now, either by my own hand or that of another, before the greater evil is entirely wrought. I know and you know that where I once dead, you could and would set free my immortal spirit, even as you did my poor Lucy's. Were death or the fear of death the only thing that stood in the way, I would not shrink to die here, now, amidst the friends who love me. But death is not all. I cannot believe that to die in such a case when there is hope before us and a bitter task to be done is God's will. Therefore, I, on my part, give up here the certainty of eternal rest and go out into the dark where may be the blackest thing that the world or nether worlds hold. We were all silent, for we knew instinctively that this was only a prelude. The faces of the others were set, and Harker's grew ashen gray. Perhaps he guessed better than any of us what was coming. She continued, "This is what I can give into the hotchpot. I could not But note the quaint legal phrase which she used in such a place and with all seriousness. What will each of you give? Your lives, I know, she went on quickly. That is easily for brave men. That is easy for brave men. Your lives are God's, and you can give them back to him. But what will you give to me? She looked again questioningly, but this time avoided her husband's face. Quincy seemed to understand. He nodded, and her face lit up. Then I shall tell you plainly what I want, for there is must be no doubtful matter in this connection between us now. You must promise me, one and all, even you, my beloved husband, that should the time come, you will kill me. What is that time? The voice was Quincy's, but it was low and strained. When you shall be convinced that I am so changed that in is better that I die than I may live. When I am thus dead in the flesh, then you will, without a moment's delay, drive a stake through me and cut off my head, or do whatever else may be wanting to give me rest. Quincy was the first to rise after the pause. He knelt down before her and taking her hand in his, said solemnly, I'm only a rough fellow who hasn't perhaps lived as a man should do to win such a distinction. But I swear to you by all that I hold sacred and dear, that should the time ever come, I shall not flinch from the duty that you have set us. And I promise too that I shall make all certain, for if I am only doubtful, I shall take it that the time has come. My true friend, was all she could say amidst her fast falling tears, as bending over she kissed his hand. I swear the same, my dear Madam Mina, said Van Helsing. And I, said Lord Galdmarine, each of them in turn kneeling to her to take the oath. I followed myself. Then her husband turned to her, wan-eyed and with a greenish pallor which subdued the snowy whiteness of his hair, and said, and must I, too, make such a promise, oh, my wife? You too, my dearest, she said with infinite yearning of pity in her voice and eyes. You must not shrink. You are nearest and dearest, and all the world to me. Our souls are knit into one for all life and time. Think, dear, that there have been times when brave men have killed their wives and their womankind to keep them from falling into hands of the enemy. Their hands did not falter any the more because those that they love implored them to slay them. It is men's duty towards those whom they love in such times of sore trial. And oh, my dear, if it is to be that I must meet death at any hand, let it be the hand of him that loves me best. Dr. Van Helsing, I have not forgotten your mercy in poor Lucy's case to him who loved. She stopped with a flying blush and changed her phrase, to him who had best right to give her peace. If that time shall come again, I look to you to make it a happy memory of my husband's life, that it was his loving hand which set me free from the awful wrath upon me. Again, I swear, came the professor's resonant voice. Mrs. Harper smiled, positively smiled, as with a sigh of relief, she leaned back and said, and now, one word of warning, a warning which you must never forget this time. If it ever come, may come quickly and unexpectedly, and in such case, you must lose no time in using your opportunity. At such a time, I myself might be, nay, if the time ever comes, shall be leagued with your enemy against you. One more request. She became very solemn as she said this. It is not vital and necessary like the other. But I want you to do one thing for me, if you will. We all acquiesced, but no one spoke. There was no need to speak. I want you to read the burial service. She was interrupted by a deep groan from her husband. Taking his hand in hers, she held it over her heart and continued, "You must read it over me some day, whatever may be the issue of all this fearful state of things. It will be a sweet thought to all or some of us. You, my dearest, will, I hope, read it, for then it will be in your voice, in my memory, forever, come what may." "But oh, my dear one," he pleaded, "death is afar off from you." "Nay," she said, holding up a warning hand, "I am deeper in death than at this moment than if the weight of an earthy grave lay upon me, heavy upon me. Oh, my wife, must I read it?" he said before he began. "It would comfort me, husband," was all she said, and he began to read when she had got the book ready. How could anyone tell of that strange scene, its solemn, its gloom, its sadness, its horror, and withal its sweetness? Even a septic who can see nothing but a travesty of bitter truth in anything holy or emotional would have been melted to the heart that he seen that little group of loving and devoted friends kneeling around that stricken and sorrowing lady, or heard the tender passion of her husband's voice as in tones so broken with emotion that often he had to pause. He read the simple and beautiful service from the burial of death. I cannot go on. Words and voice fail me. She was right in her instinct. Strange as it all was, bizarre as it may hereafter seem, even to us who felt its potent influence at the time. It's it comforted us much, and the silence which showed Mrs. Harker's coming relapse from her freedom of soul did not seem so full of despair to any of us as we had dreaded. Jonathan Harker's journal, 15 October, Varna. We left Charing Cross on the morning of the 12th, got to Paris the same night, and took the places secured for us in the Orient Express. We traveled night and day, arriving here at about 5 o'clock. Lord went to the consulate to see if any telegram had arrived for him, whilst the rest of us came on to this hotel, the Odysseus. The journey may have had incidents. I was, however, too eager to get on to care for them. Until the Serena Catherine comes into port, there will be no interest for me in anything in the wide world. Thank God, Mina is well and looks to be getting stronger. Her color is coming back. She sleeps a great deal. Throughout the journey, she slept nearly all the time. Before sunrise and sunset, however, she is very wakeful and alert, and it has become a habit for Van Helsing to hypnotize her at such times. At first, some effort was needed, and he had to make many passes, but now she seems to yield at once, as if by habit, and scarcely any action is needed. He seems to have power at these particular moments to simply will, and her thoughts obey him. He always asks her what she can see and hear. She answers to the first, "Nothing, all is dark," and to the second, "I can hear the waves lapping against the ship and the water rushing by. Canvas and cordage strain, and masts and yards creak. The wind is high. I can hear it in the shrouds, and the bow throws back the foam. It is evident that the Serena Catherine is still at sea, hastening on her way to Varna. Lord Godalming has just returned. He had 4 telegrams, one each day since we started, and all to the same effect that the Serena Catherine had not been reported to Lloyd's from anywhere. He had arranged before leaving London that his agent should send him every day a telegram saying if the ship had been reported. He was to have a message, even if she were not reported, so that he might be sure that there was a watch being kept at the other end of the wire. We had dinner early and went to bed early. Tomorrow we are to see the vice consul and to arrange, if we can, about getting on board the ship as soon as she arrives. Van Helsing said that our chance will be to get on the boat between sunrise and sunset. The Count, even if he takes the form of a bat, cannot cross the running water of his own volition, and so cannot leave the ship, as he dare not change to man's form without suspicion, which he evidently wishes to avoid. He must remain in the box. If then we come to on board after sunrise, he is at our mercy, for we can open the box and make sure of him, as we did of poor Lucy before he wakes. What mercy he shall get from us will not count for much. We think that we shall not have much trouble with officials or the seamen. Thank God, this is the country where bribery can do anything, and we are well supplied with money. We have only to make sure that the ship cannot come into port between sunset and sunrise without our being warned, and we shall be safe. Judge Moneybag will settle this case, I think. 16 October. Mina's report still the same. Lapping waves and rushing water, darkness and favoring winds. We are evidently in good times, and when we hear of the Serena Catherine, we shall be ready, as she must pass the Dardanelles. We are sure to have some report. 17 October. Everything is pretty well fixed now, I think, to welcome the Count on his return from his tour. Godalming told the shippers that he fancied that the box sent aboard might contain something stolen from a friend of his, and got half a consent that he might open it at his own risk. The owner gave him a paper telling the captain to give him every facility in doing whatever he chose on board the ship, and also some similar authorization to his agent at Varna. We have seen the agent, who was much impressed with Godalming's kindly manner to him, and we are all satisfied that whatever he can do to aid our wishes will be done. We have already arranged what to do in case we get the box open. If the Count is there, Van Helsing and Seward will cut off his head at once and drive a stake through his heart. Morris and Godalming and I shall prevent interference. Even if we have to use the arms, which we shall have ready. The professor says that if we must so treat the Count's body, it will soon after fall into dust. In such case, there would be no evidence against us in case any suspicion of murder were aroused. But even if it were not, we should stand or fall by our act. And perhaps someday this very script may be evidence to come between some of us and a rope. For myself, I should take the chance only too thankfully if it were to come. We mean to leave no stone unturned to carry out our intent. We have arranged with certain officials that the instant the Serena Catherine is seen, we are to be informed by a special messenger. 24 October. A whole week of waiting. Daily telegrams to Galdemine, but only the same story, not yet reported. Mina's morning and even evening hypnotic answer is unvaried, lapping waves, rushing waters, and creaking masks. Telegram, October 24th. Rufus Smith, Lloyd's, London, to Lord Godalming, care of H.B.M., Vice Consul Varna. Serena Catherine reported this morning from Darnells.